Hello, welcome to this presentation, which is kind of out of place, and I'm going a week ahead of us today because of our weather situation and the fact that I am going to not meet. I don't want us to meet face to face tomorrow because of the weather. So we're going to hold off on doing the writing seminar, which we would have done if we were meeting face to face tomorrow, until next week when we get to class, hopefully, and we'll be face to face next week, and flip flopping what we would do next week to tomorrow. So, what we were going to talk about next week is how to be a student advocate. And in this particular seminar, I like to talk a little bit about culture just to give you some idea. Not only to define culture, but to look at the different demographies in the local school districts to see if you're aware of what the demographics are in surrounding Round Rock and surrounding school districts. So I ask that you take notes when you're viewing one of these PowerPoint presentations. In this particular presentation, I would like for you to use a Cornell Notes format, and I will provide that to you via email so that you've got it. If you need more than one, just make more than one copy if you're writing more than necessary, or if you're writing more than one page of notes. Also, at the end of this will be a quick reflection that I'll ask you to write with just a teeny tiny bit of research that I ask that you have ready for us to discuss next week when we meet face to face. And we'll get there in just a second. Before we start talking about defining culture and how to be a student advocate, I'm going to scoot out of this real quick and show you our calendar just to give you a quick update as to what's going on. So as you see, tomorrow is the 12th. We are not going to meet face to face because of weather situations in our area. We're supposed to be talking about writing and evaluating writing samples, and that is something that is very much necessary to be in the classroom together so that we can collaborate and so that I can help you with these writing samples. I'm not changing what's due for homework. So what you've done for homework and what you'll turn in for homework, we're going to keep the same. So you're going to turn in chapters 9 and 11 from the Write book and the Accommodating Diversity Through Interactive Writing article response. Hopefully you're keeping up with the TELPAS Educator Guide as well. But again, I'm flipping for tomorrow. Since I want the writing to be an in-person thing, we're going to flip it to tomorrow, talking about family and community advocacy. And then we'll start looking at your content area lessons next week. That's something that's due next week, your lesson plan. And you'll have to be in touch with me over the week to let me know what questions you have about writing your lesson plan. The other thing is the field experience notebook next week, which is the notes that you took while you were at Purple Sage. There is a reflection that I ask that you write. You'll have that due next week as well on the 19th. I'll also give you, I don't know if you remember the first day of class, but on the first day of class, you filled out a pre-assessment. I'm going to give that back to you, and I want you to see how your knowledge has grown over this semester. So we'll do that next week. The following week is our Thanksgiving week. You already have your final review, and the 26th of November is a Tuesday. That is the week of Thanksgiving. We don't normally meet face-to-face that day. So you'll have your review in hand, and I will give you a practice test to work on for the week. And this is the certification practice test. So you would work on it to kind of get a feel of how the certification test goes. And then we can talk about it on the 3rd, which is our last day of class and your final exam. Again, be in touch with me with any questions you have. especially considering that we're not meeting face to face tomorrow, and I'm asking that you have a lesson plan turned in next week. Now, on to our presentation. Defining culture and how to be a student advocate. And that's an advocate as a teacher or a member of faculty or staff on a school campus. First, to define culture, there is a definition here that's very explicit as to culture. We can consider any small community having its own culture, but this is what I want you to think about in terms of heritage, geography, customs, family, and so on. So I'll read the definition. Culture is the implicit and explicit patterns for living, the dynamic system of commonly agreed upon symbols and meanings, the deep structure of knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, customs, behaviors, traditions, and/or habits that are shared and make up the total way of life of a people as negotiated by individuals in the process of constructing a personal identity. And then I want you to think about your cultural heritage. Where do you come from? Who are your people? What are your customs and traditions that you and your family celebrate or honor frequently? I think of my cultural heritage as it's helpful nowadays that we have these DNA assessments that we can do. My mom has done 23andMe. So I kind of have a really good idea of what her DNA makeup is. And what I would think of as culture would be her pretty much 98% Northern European, UK, and Irish background and heritage. That doesn't mean that that's the way we celebrated life, as we did not celebrate Irish or United Kingdom, British kind of culture all of our lives, unless you consider the sort of German European area celebration of Christmas. And we always had a very, very common every year way we celebrated Christmas. We would go to my grandmother's houses, one for Christmas Eve and one for Christmas Day. And that's just the way it was for many, many, many years. Beyond that, other than holidays, I'm not sure that I have much of a rich cultural heritage. And not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that my makeup is such that I'm more mixed and not tied to one specific meaning of symbols, of belief or art or morals or law or customs, anything like that. I was just brought up as an Anglo, and that's just the way I know to live. So I want you to think about what's your cultural heritage. Where did you come from? Who are your people? What are your customs and beliefs? And let's talk about that when we get together next week. Ethnicity is a little bit different, and some people tend to confuse ethnicity and race, and we'll talk about race momentarily. But ethnicity refers to a group of people who have common DNA or common ancestry, memories of shared historical past, a cultural focus on one or more symbolic elements. If you think of Italian Americans, those are a group of people who have common ancestry, but also have some roots in another culture. Italian American, Jewish American, you could think African American as well. Ethnicity would be a type of people based on their ancestry. Some ethnic groups don't have a shared culture, and many groups with a shared culture aren't ethnic groups. I think of that as I am part of a group of people who love the same band and have loved the same band of musicians for years. We share a culture in that, but we are not ethnically similar. So you can think of shared culture and ethnic groups that way. Race more commonly recently has been considered to be a social construct and not something that is actual scientific. People have been grouped together or classified because of some kind of, in some cases, skin color, some history, some nationality, some geographical location. Again, you see here, essentially race is an ethnic group that has assumed biological basis or physical attributes that are believed to be characteristics of that group. Social construct would mean that someone decided at some point in writing journalistic articles or some kind of piece, book or something, where someone needed to put people in a category and decided to call that a race of people. Sometimes it's difficult to identify someone's race based on their physical characteristics because a lot of us have multiple racial and ethnic backgrounds. As I mentioned, I have Irish, I have German, I have Native American, I have British and British Isles all in my DNA. That's not one specific classification of people. So you might consider, because my skin is pale, that I am Caucasian, and that would be labeled under that race category. Now we're going to move into talking about the demographics of area schools. And this is just a map of district regions throughout the state of Texas. Austin and our area is in what is known as Region 13 in Texas. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the schools that are in Region 13, which is within the Travis County and a little bit of outside of Travis County area. The Austin Independent School District, in the 2016-2017 year, I did update this PowerPoint this year. So the 2016-2017 data was the most recent I could find. And yet, if you listen to the news more recently, you know that Austin ISD is losing enrollment. Parents are taking their children out of Austin Independent School District schools and moving them to charter schools, private schools, or they're moving into suburbs, which would then put them in a different school district. So Austin's numbers are kind of wonky, but this is what we've got based on 2016-2017 data. 7.5% of the students in Austin ISD are African American, 0.1% are American Indian, 4% are Asian, 58% Hispanic, 0.1% Pacific Islander, 27% white, and so on. The thing you might be interested in here specifically for ESL is that there is a 28.2% LEP population, or limited English proficient population, and a 29.7% bilingual and ESL population. And those are those who have been identified by assessment and the LPAC and are placed in a bilingual and or an ESL program. That kind of makes sense, considering that 58%, more than half of the population of Austin Independent School District, is Hispanic. For Round Rock, 8.7% African American, 0.4% American Indian, 15% Asian, 30% Hispanic, 40.7% white, and so on, 9.4% LEP, and 10.4% bilingual or ESL. Again, very interesting considering that 30% of the students in Round Rock's ISD is considered Hispanic. Taylor ISD is out east of Austin a little ways. I'll let you look at the numbers here. And don't forget to check the LEP and bilingual numbers. That's a super low number, 13.4 and 13.3%, especially because there's way more than 50% of the population in Taylor is considered and considers themselves Hispanic. Leander ISD, out west of Austin or Round Rock, I'll let you look at the numbers here. 25% Hispanic with 5.4% LEP, 5.6% bilingual and ESL. And Georgetown's the last one we'll look at. I'll let you look at the numbers again. 43% Hispanic here with a 13.9% LEP, 13.6% bilingual. Just to quickly highlight the at-risk populations and the economically disadvantaged populations, those are something you want to consider too if you are looking at a district. I wanted to make the most impact, so I focused on finding a school that had high at-risk and economically disadvantaged students. That was the Manor School District, which again is east of Austin. It looks like Georgetown would fit that as well, Georgetown ISD. Those are pretty high numbers for at-risk and economically disadvantaged students. There is a scientific field of study called ethnography, where in this field of study, people study where people come from. The scientific study of individual peoples and cultures. Ethnography kind of has a bad connotation to some people because there are groups of people who believe that their ethnicity is the best ethnicity and they use that against other people. We want to make sure that when we are studying ethnic backgrounds of people, we're using science and the scientific study of who these people are and where they came from. We do want to make note that when schools and teachers focus on the cultures that make up the community in the classrooms or the communities in the schools, there is more engagement in school itself. So when cultures and people feel welcome and appreciated and noticed and acknowledged, then they want to be there. So just think of the kids in your class who you might see if you were going to teach in one of the local school districts, how you might welcome your students so that they feel safe and secure and want to be at school. Now, how do we do that? I've given you some data on the local school districts and the demographic numbers. You know you're going to experience students that are different from you, whether ethnically or linguistically. So how are you going to learn about these students and how are you going to become an advocate for them? That's where we're starting now. The first thing you can do is observe the environment. Observe your school, observe the community, look at more demographic information and more data about the school district. Adopt an ethnographic perspective. Think of yourself as a student of ethnicity, so that if you were to have a classroom that was a multicultural classroom, you would be able to make all of those students feel welcome and safe and secure and therefore more engaged in school. Beyond observations, you could interview family members, neighborhood folks, parents or guardians, and the students themselves. And one of the best things you can do to learn about students and where they come from is to visit their homes. If your school allows you time away from your classwork or time to get out to meet with parents, not just parent conferences where the parents come to you, but you going into their environment helps you learn about their environment and cultures. When I was a sixth grade teacher, one of my many principals required that before school started, we would go into the neighborhoods where our students would be coming from to do neighborhood walks. And we each of us as teachers had a list of who our students were with their addresses, and we would just go knocking on doors to introduce ourselves and say hi to the students this was always really fun for me. I kind of hated it, or I hated the idea that I had to do it, but when you were doing it, it was super beneficial. I still remember the looks on my students' faces when they saw their teacher was at their door, and I remember specifically the conditions that some of them were living in, because remember, I specifically chose to go to a high needs, low socioeconomic school. Um, so when they came to me in my classroom, I already knew them and we already had a little bit of a rapport. So behavior wasn't as much of an issue, and I was able to recognize things that they needed or how I could make them feel safe in my classroom. So I honestly believe that neighborhood walks or getting out into the community is an extreme benefit to you being able to identify students' culture and working best with them. As an advocate for your limited English proficient students, what can you do instructionally, with your colleagues, within your school system, with your families, and in the community in which your school exists? Instructionally, how are you going to be an advocate for these students? We've talked a lot about this, and as you think about being a teacher, I hope you're thinking about how you're going to instructionally help your students. All of these things on this slide are just that. You're going to provide comprehensible input. You're going to modify instruction and pacing. You're going to test your students appropriately at the appropriate times and their appropriate levels. You're going to provide a safe classroom environment, and you're going to provide a learning environment that celebrates everybody. With other colleagues, how are you going to help your students? Well, you can share information with teachers who share the same students, and you can be a resource because you're a professional. You're going to be a certified ESL teacher when you are finished with this program, and you will have the knowledge. So there will be people who need your knowledge. So serve as a resource for them. Within your school district or school system, you want to be able to make or recognize when students need additional help. If they're gifted and they're not being served because they're bored or because they're not getting the challenge they need, and they're gifted, then you would refer them to the person in your school who would appropriately refer them. And then that same goes for special education. If you have students who are language learners but also show some additional needs, then you would refer them for special education. And as you do that, you may be serving on an LPAC, or at least being able to guide an LPAC or be a resource for an LPAC because of your professional knowledge of ESL education. With families, how do you advocate for your students? Well, obviously, as a teacher, you're the one who sees the children more mostly than parents do in many situations. So you have to communicate with your parents and guardians. You've got to be able to telephone parents, email parents, text parents, communicate with them through application programs like Class Dojo. You might do home visits, telephone calls. There are some principals who require teachers every week to contact parents to give those parents at least one positive update about their student for that week. So you will probably be communicating with families quite often. Building a trusting relationship with your parents means that you show you care. That is with communication. That is with helping their child as much as you possibly can. And then engaging parents in the student's education, offering to do game nights or teach them what you know about ESL. If the parents speak Spanish and you can help with English, then maybe you have an after-school class for parents. Maybe you have parents come in and serve as help in your classroom, or maybe they come and talk to your students about their job. Do whatever you can to bring families into the students' school life so that there is more engagement all around. And within the community, that's the city or surrounding area of your school, help parents when they need other resources. Let's say that your families are from a low socioeconomic situation, and some of them need help with groceries. There are food pantries in your community, especially, but many school districts offer food pantries or other places where students might be able to get some new clothes or new shoes, or if you see that a student needs glasses, there are many school districts that have glasses and eye doctor appointment support for children. So learn what those resources are through your community and be able to share those with parents so that they can get the help they need. And then it's always great to have professionals from the community come in and talk to your students. And if you can find professionals who mimic the ethnic makeup of your classroom, that shows them that there's a model of success that looks like them, and they feel more confident about their futures because they can see it in those people who look and maybe speak like they do. Here are some resource links for resources that parents might find helpful for their kids. I particularly like colorincolorado.org. It's got everything you would need to know as a teacher on it when working with ESL and bilingual students. And here's the assignment. You'll research the school district in which you'd like to begin your teaching career. Obviously, I've done Austin, Taylor, Leander, and all that. You can certainly use that information. But if there's another district that you're interested in working for, I'd like for you to look specifically at that one. And I want you to look for the demographics, like what's the makeup of the district by ethnicity? What are the teacher salaries, especially for a 0-year teacher? What are their campus improvement plan goals? If there is a campus improvement plan, it might also be abbreviated to CIP. Are there any dropout rates listed on their demographic information? Can you find their star passing rates, etc.? So I'm asking you to look for what a school website or a district website would offer on particular schools. I can tell you that Round Rock has a really great and comprehensive website. So if you wanted to just start to look at the Round Rock website to see if you can find this kind of information, that'd be great. But then I want you to go out to a different district and see if you can find that same information in some other district that you might want to work in. With the information that you learn from your research, I want you to write a half a page to 1 page, not very long at all. But I want you to write about how in that district that you just researched would you be an advocate for your students instructionally, with your colleagues, with your families, within the school system, and within the community. And I'd like for you to bring that half page to 1 page reflection with you next week to class so that we can talk about what you found and what ahas you might have had or what questions you have. Or just how you think about, or what you think about what you have researched. Here are a couple of links for where I found some data, and you might find this helpful when you are looking for the district that you are going to be researching. Specifically, the Texas Tribune district demographic information is super easy to read, and it may even be more updated now than this particular reference. So you might want to check that Texas Tribune link to see if you can find some information that might help you do that little bit of research. I will email you guys all of this information, and we'll check in with you a little bit later in the week too, just to see how everybody's doing. I especially want to hear from you if you are working on your lesson plan and are stuck and need some guidance or need some help. Please let me know. As of right now, I will not be back in Round Rock this week. But if you need to meet with me, I could be back on campus on Thursday, maybe for a little while in the morning. So yeah, just be in touch with me and let me know. And I want to make sure to be as available to you as possible since I won't be seeing you tomorrow. Everybody have a nice week and stay warm and don't drive on ice. and be very, very safe. I will see you next week, Tuesday the 19th in Round Rock at 8 a.m. Have a great week, guys.